After years of whispers, scandals, and public heartbreak, Rasheeda has finally done what many thought she never would. She's walked away from Kirk Frost for good. No staged reality show drama, no empty threats. This time, it's in black and white. The divorce papers are signed, sealed, and on their way to the court. For a couple whose entire marriage has played out under the glare of cameras. The final chapter is here, and it's far more explosive than anything we've seen on Love and Hip Hop, because behind the scenes, this wasn't just about infidelity. It was about years of betrayal, secret deals, at a breaking point that Rasheeda couldn't come back from. The moment the news hit the internet, it felt like a cultural earthquake. For years, people had watched Rasheeda and Kirk Frost's marriage play out like a never-ending soap opera, a messy, unpredictable mix of love, betrayal, forgiveness, and repeat. But this time, it wasn't just another episode. This time, there was no "we're working it out" ending. Rasheeda officially filed for divorce, and for the first time in a long time, fans could feel it in their gut. This was final. The statement was short but powerful. Ms. Rasheeda Buckner Frost has officially filed for divorce from Kirk Frost after careful consideration. No sugarcoating, no staged photos. No emotional Instagram captions begging the public to respect our privacy. It's just cold, clear truth. And that truth hit harder than any Love and Hip Hop storyline ever could. People who had been rooting for her freedom were ecstatic. Hashtag started trending before noon. Hashtag free Rasheeda. Hashtag finally free. Hashtag it's single quotes as over. But while the internet celebrated, the people close to Rasheeda knew this wasn't a moment she took lightly. This wasn't a split driven by one explosive fight or a social media blow-up. This was years of pain, humiliation, and broken trust boiling over into a decision she had been quietly preparing for. To understand how they got here, you have to go back. Rasheeda and Kirk weren't just a couple, they were a brand. They built businesses, ran music ventures, and turned their relationship into a reality TV empire. But the cracks in their marriage were deep, and they had been widening in full public view. The biggest blow came years ago when Kirk admitted to fathering a child outside the marriage. It was one of the most humiliating and public betrayals ever broadcast on VH1. Fans screamed at their screens, telling Rasheeda to walk away. But she stayed, trying to believe the man she loved could change. And it wasn't just infidelity. People in Rasheeda's inner circle had been warning her for years that Kirk's loyalty in business wasn't as solid as it seemed. She ran boutiques, clothing lines, and multiple ventures that carried both their names. But there were always whispers about money being moved around, investments made without her consent, and quiet deals Kirk struck with people she didn't trust. Every time she confronted him, he had an explanation, a smooth answer that bought him just enough time to reset her trust. But the truth has a way of seeping through, even when you try to seal the cracks. Earlier this year, according to sources who've known Rasheeda for decades, she discovered that Kirk had made a significant property purchase without telling her, and not just with his money. It came from a joint account. A joint account that funded her businesses, their household, and their future plans. When she asked him why he hadn't told her, he said it was an investment for us. But when she pressed him for details, the story shifted twice. That's when her instincts kicked in. If she couldn't trust his word in money, couldn't trust him in anything. The betrayal in business cut deeper than the betrayals in love. Rasheeda had built herself into a powerhouse in the Atlanta scene, respected for her grind and her discipline. To find out that her own husband might be undermining her financially was more than she could bear. She started paying closer attention to their accounts, to his behavior, to the people around him. Then came the moment that snapped the final thread. One night she showed up unannounced to a private industry event. She wasn't there for Kirk, she had a friend to support, but the moment she walked in, she saw him across the room. He wasn't just talking to another woman. According to people who were there, they were locked into a close, intimate conversation, the kind That has body language screaming louder than words. The woman wasn't just anybody. She was connected to the music industry, someone who could have been doing business with Kirk. Rasheeda didn't cause a scene. She didn't even approach them. She just turned and left, her mind eerily calm. That calm wasn't numbness, it was clarity. She realized she had no anger left to spend on this man. The love that had made her fight for their marriage so many times before was gone. And without that, there was no reason to stay. From that night on, Rasheeda moved differently. She stopped wearing her wedding ring in public. She avoided posting anything about Kirk on social media, slowly erasing his presence from her platforms. On Love and Hip Hop, she kept a careful distance during scenes that involved him. Friends who'd seen her go through the emotional back and forth before said she seemed steady, like a woman who had already made up her mind and was just waiting for the right moment. That moment came a few weeks later. Her legal team filed the paperwork quietly, without fanfare, but word still got out, and once it did, spread like wildfire. Fans lit up Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, dissecting every photo, every past interview, and every public appearance, for signs that she'd been planning this. And the signs were there all along. Kirk, on the other hand, was blindsided, or at least that's how he acted. He hasn't made any public statements, but insiders say he's been calling mutual friends, asking if there's still a way to fix things. But this time, nobody believes her mind can be changed. The woman who had forgiven him for years, who had fought to hold their marriage together while the world told her to leave, has finally chosen herself. The fans are calling it her victory lap. Rasheeda, from what those close to her say, doesn't see it as a win. She sees it as survival. Ending the marriage isn't just about walking away from Kirk. It's about reclaiming her peace, her trust, and her future. She's ending a chapter that defined much of her adult life. But she's also stepping into a space where her decisions won't be second-guessed. Her finances won't be compromised, and her love won't be taken for granted. It's the kind of ending that feels less like closing a book and more like finally putting down a weight you didn't realize you were carrying. And as the public watches her next moves, one thing is clear. Rasheeda isn't just free. She's done playing the role of the forgiving wife for the cameras. This time, the story is hers to tell. In the days after the filing, the silence from Kirk was almost louder than any public statement he could have made. For a man who thrived on being visible, who built his career in part on his willingness to play the villain on reality TV, his absence was glaring. The only public movements came from his Instagram stories, where he posted vague motivational quotes about keeping your head up and trusting God's plan. But people who knew the real situation said those posts weren't confidence. They were desperation. Behind the scenes, Kirk wasn't taking the news well. Multiple sources claimed he had been calling not just friends, but also producers from Love and Hip Hop, trying to figure out whether the divorce filing would be used in the next season's storyline. Some say he even reached out to Rasheeda directly, asking to talk things through before it went too far. But Rasheeda, according to those close to her, wasn't interested in conversations that would lead to more promises and no change. She'd heard it all before, and this time, the papers were already in motion. The industry's reaction was mixed. Some people were genuinely shocked, not because they thought Rasheeda was incapable of leaving, but because they had gotten used to the cycle. Scandal, argument, reconciliation, repeat. This time broke the pattern. Business associates who had once been careful not to take sides suddenly felt free to express where their loyalties lay. Several Atlanta entrepreneurs posted public congratulations to Rasheeda, praising her strength and hinting that they had seen things behind closed doors that the public would never know. But there were also people in Kirk's corner, quietly suggesting that the marriage could still be saved, that every relationship has ups and downs, and that maybe the two just needed time apart. The difference was those voices were quieter now, almost uncertain. if they knew deep down this was different. The gossip blogs, of course, were eating it up. Old clips of Rasheeda calling Kirk out on TV went viral again. Fans posted side-by-side photos showing her glow in recent months compared to the tension in her face during past seasons. TikTokers stitched together timelines of every public humiliation she'd endured, ending each video with a satisfied, "She's finally free." But what the public didn't know yet was just how deep the betrayal ran. The property purchased Rasheeda had discovered wasn't an isolated incident. According to a source familiar with their finances, there had been several questionable moves over the past 2 years, some involving mutual business accounts, others involving deals where Kirk allegedly used Rasheeda's name or connections without her consent. None of these moves had been illegal on paper, but morally, they were cracks in the trust that no amount of apologies could patch. One insider revealed that Rasheeda had been warned more than once by close friends to keep her personal finances completely separate from Kirk's. She'd brushed it off at the time, believing that marriage meant partnership. But after what she'd learned, she quietly began restructuring her business accounts months before filing for divorce, ensuring that every dollar connected to her brand was untouchable. Kirk, meanwhile, was said to be scrambling to protect his own image. Friends claim he began reaching out to influencers, DJs, and local promoters to make sure they weren't buying into the hype about him being the bad guy. But the problem was, the hype was built on years of receipts. From the paternity scandal to the on-camera arguments, the public had seen too much to believe this was just a case of irreconcilable differences. The emotional toll on Rasheeda was heavy, but she wore it with the same composure she had during all the storms before. People close to her described her as focused and relieved, as if she'd finally stepped out of a cage. She didn't even realize she'd been in for so long. She wasn't wasting time with public rants or long-winded explanations. She let the divorce filing speak for itself, while subtly building a narrative of strength through her actions. She posted photos from business meetings, workout sessions, dinners with friends, all without a trace of Kirk in sight. But if people thought Rasheeda was simply cutting him off emotionally, they were wrong. The legal process meant there would be financial negotiations, property divisions, and custody considerations for their youngest child. And in those spaces, she was prepared to stand her ground. Friends say she came into every lawyer meeting with documents in order, ready to ensure that whatever came out of this divorce, she wouldn't walk away empty-handed. The tension between them grew, even without public blow-ups. At one point, Kirk was reportedly invited to a charity event where Rasheeda was also scheduled to appear. According to attendees, they stayed on opposite sides of the room all night, barely acknowledging each other. The atmosphere was thick, the kind of quiet discomfort that everyone could feel but no one dared to address. Producers from Love and Hip Hop were already plotting how to capture this new chapter on screen. Some insiders hinted that they wanted to start filming sooner rather than later to catch the raw emotions of the split. But Rasheeda was cautious. She knew that on reality TV, narratives could be twisted, and she wasn't about to let her divorce become a circus for ratings. Whether she would even continue with this show was now a question fans debated online daily. Meanwhile, the streets were talking, and not just about the divorce. Rumors began swirling that Kirk had been entertaining new women for months, possibly even while he and Rasheeda were still trying to work things out behind closed doors. Some names floated around, but nothing confirmed. Still, the whispers added another layer of drama to a story that was already dominating headlines. For Rasheeda, none of that mattered anymore. The way she saw it, the relationship had ended long before the papers were filed. The public was just catching up. She'd spent years fighting for a marriage that was never fighting for her, and now her energy was directed toward her businesses, her children, and her peace. But that didn't mean she wasn't aware of what was being said. Friends close to her say she hears it all: the praise, the criticism, the rumors. But she's not reacting. Not yet. She's letting time reveal the truth, the same way it had exposed so many of Kirk's missteps in the past. And while Kirk continues to play his hand in the court of public opinion, Rasheeda is playing hers in the court of law. That's where the real outcome will be decided, not in comment sections or blog headlines, but in agreements that will determine how the rest of their shared history gets divided. In the world of celebrity divorces, there are messy breakups, and there are legacy breakups. This one, by the looks of it, is shaping up to be both. And the end game. That's the part no one sees coming. Weeks after the initial filing, the quiet war between Rasheeda and Kirk took an unexpected turn when someone leaked what appeared to be preliminary divorce settlement terms. It wasn't clear if the leak came from someone in their legal teams or from a production insider trying to stir the pot. But once the documents hit the blogs, there was no turning back. The leak claimed that Rasheeda was asking for full ownership of several joint business ventures, including a flagship boutique location they had opened together years ago. It also alleged she was seeking primary custody of their youngest child, with Kirk getting scheduled visitation. Financially, the reported terms suggested that Rasheeda wanted a clean break, no spousal support, but also no continued entanglement in any of Kirk's future deals. The message was clear. She wasn't just leaving him, us. She was cutting the cord completely. Kirk's camp wasted no time pushing back, calling the leaks misleading and out of context. But the public perception was already shaping up, and it wasn't in his favor. Fans pointed out that for years, Rasheeda had been the face and driving force behind their businesses, while Kirk had often been shown on TV making decisions that hurt both their brand and their marriage. To many, her asking for control of what she helped build wasn't greed, it was justice. But just as the divorce seemed like it might proceed in a relatively straightforward way, another bombshell dropped. A woman came forward to a gossip blog, claiming she had been in a situationship with Kirk during what was supposed to be a reconciliation period in his marriage. She didn't give her real name, but she provided enough messages, photos, and location tags to convince people she was telling the truth. The screenshots showed flirtatious conversations, late-night meetups, and even complaints from Kirk about Rasheeda being cold. To him at home, the timing couldn't have been worse for Kirk. Public sympathy that had been slowly shifting toward him evaporated overnight. The narrative now was that Rasheeda's decision wasn't just justified, it was overdue. Social media erupted with posts defending her, urging her to take everything and warning her not to let him spin. The story in his favor, Rasheeda herself still didn't directly address the allegations. Instead, she posted a cryptic Instagram story with a single sentence: "God removes people from your life for a reason." That post alone racked up hundreds of thousands of views and hours, with fans dissecting its meaning like a coded message. Behind closed doors, Kirk reportedly tried to reach out again, not to reconcile the marriage, but to negotiate the divorce in a way that would save face for him. Some sources say he offered to concede certain assets if she agreed not to publicly discuss the details of their split. But if that was true, it didn't work, because Rasheeda had no intention of staying silent. She wasn't on a mission to destroy him, but she also wasn't about to protect his image at the expense of her own truth. Meanwhile, Love and hip-hop producers were making moves. They saw the potential for an explosive season and were reportedly willing to offer Rasheeda a significant bonus to sign on for filming the divorce process. But she was careful. Friends say she told them that if she returned, it would be on her terms, and she wouldn't allow the storyline to be manipulated into a maybe they'll get back together arc. She was done with that cycle, both on-screen and off-dot. As the legal battle stretched on, Kirk appeared in public less and less. When he did, it was often at events where the crowd energy felt different, polite but distant. For a man used to owning every room, the shift was obvious. Rasheeda, in contrast, was glowing. She launched new product lines, made appearances at women's empowerment events, and even teased a possible memoir that fans were already dying to read. The turning point came when the court documents officially confirmed that the couple had reached a settlement. While the exact figures weren't disclosed, Insiders claimed Rasheeda walked away with full control of their most profitable businesses, the primary residence, and a structured custody agreement that gave her the stability she wanted for their child. Kirk kept certain assets tied to his personal ventures. But it was clear he didn't walk away with the upper hand. The reaction was explosive. Supporters flooded Rasheeda's comments with congratulations, calling her a role model for anyone stuck in a toxic situation. Memes celebrating her freedom spread across Twitter and Instagram. Captions like "She stayed loyal, but she stayed smart." For Kirk, the settlement was a public loss. But in private, some believe he saw it as an opportunity to rebuild without the constant scrutiny of a high-profile marriage. Whether he would take that opportunity or repeat past mistakes remained to be seen. But for Rasheeda, the chapter was closed. In her first post after the settlement, she shared a photo of herself smiling on a beach with the caption, "Peace looks good on me." The likes poured in not just from fans, but from fellow celebrities who had been quietly rooting for her all along. The divorce wasn't just a personal ending. It was a cultural moment. For years, viewers had watched Rasheeda navigate betrayal, humiliation, and public doubt only to see her choose herself in the end. It was a reminder that strength doesn't always look like staying. Sometimes it looks like walking away. Still, the story didn't end there. Whispers began circulating that Rasheeda was already in early talks for a new reality project, one that would focus solely on her businesses and personal growth, free from the baggage of her past relationship. True, it would be the ultimate power move, turning the pain of a public divorce into a platform